if we're trying to help each other in hand pushing, it's the worst thing to do, to like focus on his center and try to like push in on it like this. I mean, it gives us a chance to display our egos in a certain sense. It's like, if I'm perfectly lined up and you push straight in, then maybe I can discharge you perfectly. You know, well, that's great, but it's not training. It just, like I say, demonstrates your massive internal power that you've picked up over the last year or something. Instead, you cultivate things in a completely different way. You play, and then you find the edge. Say there's a certain point where when I touch Tom, he'll respond perfectly. If I get a little closer to the center, there's a confusion. And this leads me to explain what double-weightedness is. This is time for the famous shoe-kicking exercise. This is what I use to explain. This is my teaching technique, my teaching aid. All right, this is a normal object. If I kick this shoe, it does that. It's very hard for you to kick it, in fact, so it does not use most of the energy up in turning, like this. This means this is a real object that has a yin, a yang, and a center. When I kick it, it differentiates into yin and yang and a center. Part of it moves away from me, part of it moves towards me. It has a center that's more or less stable. It's not completely it moves away, but it combines these two movements. Now, suppose I don't want the shoe to do this. I'm very annoyed. Every time I push it, it seems to turn. So I have to do this. Then it moves correctly. I've pushed it at 2 points. This means my push is double-weighted. This is what double-weighted means. But more importantly, if I push it at 1 point and it moves as though I pushed it at 2 points, it's double-weighted. In one case, it's a double-weighted push. In another case, it's a double-weighted response. So if Tom pushes my body at 2 points, he effectively traps it around the spine so I can't turn back and forth. This is a double-weighted push. But if he pushes my body at 1 point, and it moves as though he were pushing it at 2 points, then my body is double-weighted. So what we are trying to do is, in other words, by double-weighted means it has not differentiated substantial and insubstantial in its movement. What we are trying to do in Taiji is get, with your partner, is to get him to do this differentiation. So it's not a question of you push and he yields. This is not enough. You want him to push him and have him do an accurate, correct response with the body. If he does anything less than that, there's no point in repeating this push over and over again where he has a bad habit and you have a bad habit over and over and over again. What you must do is figure out, well, if he's not good enough for that, what is he good enough for? It's like somehow you've got to push him in a way so he responds correctly. And then at least you have a place to start. Then you can make that a little more difficult. And he can get a little better and a little better and a little better and a little better. But the trouble with, like I say, most hand pushing is they don't understand the purpose of it. They think the purpose is immediately to test who's better. And so nobody ever improves. But instead, like I say, if you attack someone in hand pushing and he in fact doesn't win, you should be disappointed. It means even when you gave him a complete error, he couldn't use the principle enough to beat you, which means, well, it just means you have an inferior opponent partner and you're not going to necessarily learn as much with him. When you do the wrong thing, you should be hoping that you get punished for it perfectly, because then you know you have a good partner. Okay, so here's what happens. As we begin to move with each other, the first axis that we become sensitive to is this one that runs straight down like this. We've got 3 dimensions, we have 3 axes of movement. So the first thing is to make sure that your partner is moving freely along this axis. Don't threaten the other axes at all at first. In other words, this is what I do as a teacher. I'm very careful that if I feel no movement in their bodies in this way, I don't shove on it. I let them just turn this way. So all I'm doing is just letting them move like that. Then once this axis is free, then, if you mix word up faster, that won't happen, yeah. Once this axis is free, then you can start thinking, what happens if I extend a little more this way? And then you see if the person can slip under on this other axis. Because remember, I told you your center couldn't separate from mine. So if he pushes straight out at me, and my center moves away, I've made a mistake. In fact, I've moved in a double-weighted way. The top part of me moved, and the bottom part of me moved in the same direction. Technically, any direction the top part of me moves, the bottom part should move in the other direction. Trying to get the center here. Any part of me that moves left, the other part should move right, backward and forward in the same way. So like I say, take your partner through stages. First, see if he can follow you this way. Back and forth. If your partner's not coordinating with you going back and forth, there's no point in going farther. I mean, it's all going to become confused immediately. But if he can follow this, then, like I say, see whether you're doing the one posture or the two posture form, doesn't make any difference. You want to see, is he really listening to me going this way and that? And this means, don't always push in exactly the same way mechanically. Then all you're doing is try to dance with each other. You know, like just make the same movements together like choreography. But instead, make the push a little different. Come forward and maybe push him a little farther this way before you turn. Or a little different. Not something radically different. It's like, this stage of Taiji is very interesting because you're learning something real important that applies to all kinds of other Zen things and stuff like that. You're learning the kind of condition that produces the most consciousness. You're learning it's this little twilight zone kind of between too much activity and too little activity. There's a certain level that's nice. It's like it produces a flow of consciousness. And you sort of learn that if you let people just be completely alone, they kind of go to sleep. And if you attack them like this, they get resistant. Either condition is not a conscious condition. If they become comfortable and relaxed, and then you kind of get into kind of playing around with each other, you start to cultivate what becomes, in the end, the most productive practice. Okay? Eventually, you can get to beating on each other if you want. But in the beginning, you want to cultivate. And so you start thinking about what you want their body to do. Don't just go, I'll just poke in blindly and this will suffice as some kind of helpful practice. No, in fact, think. I know, it's very annoying. It's very annoying to have people just poke at you and think, well, that's okay, I'm helping you practice here. But instead, be clear. It's like what they call a meaningful attack with meaning. So I'm thinking, I already know what I think Tom's body is going to do. I'm going to poke it over here, so it's going to turn this way. And if we progress at that stage, it's going to slip back under a little bit like this. So it's going to show that. If I do it, you'll see it's quite like pushing the stick in the water that I told you. You don't need a million years of training to see it move in an unnatural way. As soon as you realize it's expected to move in this natural way, you'll be very sensitive to any other movement. You'll go, even if you're not quite sure how to analyze it or what to tell them, you'll say, there was something stiff about that. There was something strange. It didn't just feel like a funny object that I found. As I always tell people, treat your partner like a strange object you found on the beach. You know? It's like, wonder what it'll do. They go this way. Don't be paranoid about it or anything. Just kind of poke around and see what it'll do. But don't poke like this. Be clear. Say, I wonder if it'll go this way. I wonder if it'll go this way. What if I pull on it? Maybe it'll go this way too. You know? See what kind of action it has. Within the context of that, you're doing this little back and forth form. But as I say, there's a way to be too mechanical that your partner goes to sleep. Just this, real dumb kind of, that some people mistakenly think of as meditation. Where they're just as zenned out as possible. And then I've seen people say, okay, I get it, I'll really help my partner. So they go like, that doesn't help either. Let's not become this masterful test of what you can do. Just keep it natural and relaxed, but make it soft and conscious. So you're thinking each time, you sort of expect, there we go. You're giving the person some real consciousness to respond to, as well as just a crazy force. Okay? Keep trying, and we'll switch partners.